Ciao, friends. So today we are talking about Sarah. She was the mother of the nation of Israel. She was the wife to Abraham. And in scripture, we see her in Genesis 12 to 23. We meet Sarah at 65 years old. She is stunningly beautiful, and she has no children. God has now, in scripture, given the command to be fruitful and multiply, and she couldn't. This for Sarah was agony, and it ate away at her, and it was a thorn in her side. Anything that we can trace back as discord and heartache and pain in Sarah's life traces back to the fact that she couldn't bear children. So in Genesis 15, the Lord made a covenant with Abraham, promising him a great nation is going to come from him, and yet his wife is barren. So I have to believe Sarah felt the weight of this covenant and the weight of her circumstances so heavy on her soul. I wonder how many of us feel the weight of the things that are put on our lives, the things that we can see and the things that we can't see. Sometimes we put them on ourselves. They're heavy weights nonetheless. Sarah felt that the promise of God was dependent on what she had to do. That wasn't true. It was always dependent on what God had to do. There's many ups and downs in the story of Sarah, and she took matters into her own hands. If you've read scripture, you know exactly what went on. She tried to make a way when she couldn't see one. Her desire to do this led to some of her greatest downfalls. And yet, God, he still came through despite her actions and her trying to make things happen. God had made his promises, and he had the plan in place from the beginning. I'm going to pick us up in Genesis 21, and I'm going to read 1 through 7. So Genesis 21 is the birth of Isaac. It is amazing. Verse 1, now the Lord was gracious to Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age at the very time God had promised him. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah bore him, and when his son Isaac was 8 days old, Abraham circumcised him as God commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. Sarah said, God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. Verse 7, and she added, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. I'm going to skip ahead real quick to Hebrews 11:11. And we are told, and by faith, Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. So good. Some takeaways from Sarah, and I have 3. First one is we can give the weight of the world that we carry on our shoulders over to God because he's faithful. He's been faithful since the beginning of time. And scripture shows us over and over and over his faithfulness. Second one, we don't have to earn God's favor. We earn it, we already have it. He already chose us long before we ever made our debut on the planet. God chose us. He knew us. He formed us. He created us. Do we have to hustle in this life? Of course. But do we have to hustle for what we're worth? Never. The last one is God keeps his promises. God is always faithful. We just have to let God be God. Sometimes that's the hardest. I know for me it is. Friends, I hope this was fruitful for you. I hope that learning about Sarah, just a little snippet about her, was helpful for you to live your best life and grow your best life and lean into God just a little bit more. As always, say it every time. Remember, there is always something to be thankful for. Promise. Ciao.